All right, my watch shows the quarter of the hour, so we will get started. Welcome to today's webinar on board governance. These trainings are being recorded, and the recording will be on the library YouTube channel as well as the State Library Niche Academy. I also have them posted on the library board LibGuide. The LibGuides can be accessed on the State Library homepage. There is a button lower down on the page, or there is a link also at the top of the page on top of the search bar. It's organized by subject. Library boards is one of the categories, and then it's Public Library Board of Trustees. So who am I? I am Monica Struck. I am Public Library Specialist at the State Library, but my degree is in library science, not in law. So none of this webinar is legal advice. So please consult legal counsel with questions. Agenda. Today we are going to be talking about some of the specifics of board structure as well as board bylaws. We will be talking about some particulars of meetings, particularly open meeting laws, and we will be talking about records as well. So in the first session, we touched on the duties of the board as outlined in Century Code. Today, we are going to rewind a little bit in Century Code, and we're going to be talking about 403803, and we're going to touch on 403811 as well. So in 403803, it specifies that there will be 5 trustees who are residents of the municipality or county. The one exception to that is in 403811, and that's addressing city, county, or multi-county systems. And then because the library board is representing a wider range of areas, they can have a larger board, so 5 to 11 members instead of 5. The library trustees can, they serve 3-year terms, and they can serve 2 consecutive terms before they need to take a year off. If there is a vacant seat, the governing body will appoint someone to fill the remainder term, and remainder terms do not count towards the 2-term limit. You might wonder why I added home rule to this slide. There was an Attorney General opinion in 2011 that states that a city or county can use their home rule charter to adjust the terms or the number of trustees on the board. So if you're in a home rule city, a home rule county, and and that's something that the board wants to play with a little bit. A city or county ordinance can adjust those 2 things, but adjustments to the home rule charter does require a majority of vote of qualified electors. So something to keep in mind. Roles on the board, the only one specifically mentioned that you absolutely have to have in Century Code is the president, but it is a good idea to have a vice president, someone to, take over the meetings if the president is out sick or can't make the meeting for whatever reason. A secretary is nice to have, or at least someone designated to take the minutes. And a treasurer can be helpful to have someone who is kind of specializing in the finances, has a bit more of a finger on it. So you'll probably recall the first duty of the board, as outlined in Century Code, is to set bylaws for governing the board. So the Century Code doesn't go any further than that to say, these bits have to be in the bylaws. But these are some things that are, helpful to put in. I would definitely put in the Century Code bits that are outlining especially the duties of the board. It is also a good idea to have board member expectations in there. And so, you want the board members to show up to meetings, to be prepared for meetings, to, be ready to engage with the content. And putting down the officers that you have, also a good idea. How you'll be running your meetings. If you want to specify you're using Robert's Rules of Order, that's a place to put in your bylaws. If the board knows that they're always going to meet the second Tuesday of every month, you can go ahead and put that in there as well. If you have specific committees involved, the bylaws is the place to put information about committees. And also a plan for revising the bylaws. So if you want to say that you're going to revisit the bylaws every 3 years, go ahead and put it in the bylaws. And also, if you make notations on the bylaws that, they were initially adopted in 1990, revised it in 93, 96, that can be a good kind of trail of breadcrumbs and help you know how often they're being looked at. So board meetings, these are important, not just because it's when you're meeting and talking about the library, but because they fall under open meeting laws. So for people who enjoy reading Century Code, North Dakota open meeting laws can be found in 4404. The important things to keep in mind, because board meetings are open meetings, you are required to give public notice, and this includes at the location of the meeting and on the library website. You have to allow for public attendance, but the public does not have to be allowed to participate. Boards have various policies about public participation in meetings, and that would again kind of fall in the board bylaws, your policy as to public participation. There are very specific circumstances where you can have a closed meeting. Basically, the board has to be consulting an attorney or discussing a confidential record. And the fact that you're going to be entering a closed meeting needs to be put in the agenda. The meeting starts in an open meeting. You cite the reason for the closed meeting, and you address what you're going to address in the closed meeting. Any votes occur in an open session, and the meeting is adjourned, in the open meeting. Special meetings can be called whenever for whatever reason. but they still need to be properly noticed. The public still needs to be able to attend. And generally, we recommend, monthly meetings are a good idea because things happen in the library every month, and a monthly meeting can make it so special meetings do not need to be called so often. Food for thought. The Attorney General's office has a lot of good resources for open meetings. They have an open meetings guide, which is a nice, 2-page quick reference. And then there's an open meetings manual that goes more into the nitty-gritty. A meeting should have an agenda. And again, you have the option to, your agenda can follow the mode that makes the most sense for your board. But generally, we have a call to order, an approval of the agenda, approval of the previous meeting's minutes, the director's report, old business, new business, and then adjournment. So parliamentary procedure, this is, a way to hold an organized meeting. There are more methods of parliamentary procedure than just Robert's Rules of Order, but Robert's Rules are the most common, I would say. But they help the meeting and the people involved in the meeting to be respectful. It helps keep discussion relevant. The general mode of it is that there is a motion for some form of action, a second, discussion, and then a vote. And if you're finding in a meeting that discussion is not being fruitful, you can always move to table discussion. Take a little time, everyone think it over, read over the materials that you have, and then, dive into it at the next meeting. So minutes. So minutes are required to be taken at open meetings. It is part of the requirements. There are 6 things that are required to be included in the minutes, and these are found in the open meetings guide. But you have to include attendance, so which board members were actually present at the meeting, the date and time of the call to order and adjournment of the meeting, a list of topics being discussed. So that's, your agenda, you have that all set. Description of motions as well as any seconds. The results of all votes and the vote for each member on a roll call vote. So again, you have a built-in list of topics in your agenda, and so it can be, really easy to take your agenda, make notes of who was present, the times that, the meeting is called to order and adjourned, and next to the topics, writing the motions and who seconded and the results of the votes. Okay, so records. So you have all of these minutes and, and notes that you guys are making, and all of these, believe it or not, are records. So a record is any document that can be tied back to library business. And any records you make are open to an open records request. North Dakota has sunshine laws, and they, are pretty liberal with what can be requested and what you need to give. There are exceptions for certain library records in 403812, and any record that connects a patron to what they have searched for or borrowed is an exempt record, and you do not have to produce it unless there is a court order. Again, there are resources from the Attorney General's office that I highly recommend you look through for questions on open records. Again, they have a guide, which is a nice, quick and dirty, 2-page affair. And then they have their open records manual that goes in more depth. And this also brings up the case of records management. This is the answer to the ultimate question: how long do we have to hold on to these records? Fortunately, the answer to the ultimate question is not always 42. The League of Cities and the Association of Counties have library-specific records retention schedules, and I just pulled the ones that are more particular to boards, but the League of Cities would recommends board minutes be kept permanently, and the annual report to the governing body should be held on for 10 years, and then to archives, and committee meeting minutes and documentation should also be kept permanently. The Association of Counties has the same recommendations, except they don't have a recommendation for committee meeting minutes. So I would, follow the League of Cities on that one. If you're not certain how to dispose of the annual report, I would recommend talking to the auditor, and they would know how to best, get it to the appropriate archive. Now I will open it up to questions. I am just going to advance the slide. Again, this is the contact information. Mine is here at the top, my direct email and phone number. Danielle Kappel is my supervisor, and Mary Susie is the state librarian. And we are all happy to answer questions whenever they come up. I will stop sharing so I can better monitor the chat. But if anyone has questions, you can either unmute and ask, or throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to answer. Yes, the governing body appoints the board officially. That is how it is outlined in Century Code. Okay, thanks, Michelle. All right, any other questions? All right, so I'm happy to give you guys another 25 minutes back of your Friday. I appreciate you coming, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Hope to see you next week.